For most of its history, Britain didn't really want an army, which is odd when you think about how often we've been at war. Soldiers were tolerated, at best. More often they were actively despised, necessary, expensive, potentially dangerous. And the fear was simple enough: kings liked armies, Parliament didn't trust them, and the public hated paying for them. So whenever the army started to look even vaguely permanent, Westminster would panic and kick the legs out from under it, disband it, cut it, starve it of money, repeat as necessary. Then came the War of Spanish Succession, and one man who refused to accept the usual rot. Under the Duke of Marlborough, Britain briefly did something extraordinary. It took a distrusted, underfunded, half-broken institution and turned it into an army capable of beating the best in Europe. Not through grand theory, not through reforming pamphlets, but through willpower, relentless admin, and an obsession with the boring details that actually win wars. My name's Chris Parkinson, and this is Redcoat History, the place for people who love British military history and a damn good story. We look at the entire history of the British Army, from the New Model Army all the way up to modern warfare. If that sounds like your cup of tea, please be sure to subscribe. And this episode is basically a short introduction to Marlborough. Many people say he was Britain's greatest ever general, and it's hard to argue with that, even for massive Wellington supporters like me.
Makes the parlez-vous to run.
Who's the boy with the hooky nose?
Today's video is basically an introduction to the great man. It spells out the problems that the British or English armies it was at the start of the era had, and how it turned into one of the most elite and effective armies in Europe. Alright, let's crack on. After the Restoration in 1660, the monarchy came back. So did chaos. General George Monk, the man who put Charles II back on the throne, was now Duke of Albemarle and effectively running the army. But he was overworked, he was ageing, and by 1670 he was dead. After that, military authority drifted into civilian hands, and they were not good hands. The late 17th century was an era of staggering corruption. Contracts were rackets, commissions were investments. Supplying the army was seen less as a duty and more as a business opportunity. In 1689, England sent an army to Ireland to fight the Jacobites. It was a disaster. Sir John Fortescue, never one to sugarcoat, he was a great historian, summed it up beautifully when he said, "The new regiments proved to be mobs of undisciplined boys. Their officers were ignorant, negligent and useless. Arms were so badly made they had to be replaced almost immediately. Artillery officers were ignorant, lazy and even cowardly, and the guns barely survived a week's work. Once on campaign, men died in the hundreds, not from enemy fire, from sickness, from starvation. No coats, no shoes." Frankly, the only saving grace was that the Jacobites were in much the same state. This wasn't bad luck, it was the inevitable result of treating the army as temporary, under-resourced and basically half privatized. One of the great problems was how regiments were run. They weren't really public institutions, they were private property. A regiment belonged to its colonel, a kind of military franchise. Many colonels were supposed to buy equipment for their men, but many instead brought the cheapest rubbish available and pocketed the rest. Civilian officials were no better. The paymaster general, a civilian post, became a license to print money. The ordinary soldier earned 8p a day. 2p was routinely deducted or skimmed or simply stolen. Colonels pocketed the pay of dead men as well, or men who never existed at all. These were known as ghost soldiers, and this was almost a normal feature of the system. In short, everyone was getting rich except the people doing the fighting. Then came one man who decided this was intolerable: John Churchill, better known to history as the Duke of Marlborough. To his soldiers he was simply Corporal John, which tells you a great deal. He took a deep personal interest in the men's welfare, and he proved something revolutionary. If you pay soldiers properly, feed them properly, equip them properly, and lead them competently, they tend to fight rather well. Churchill's career was anything but smooth. Commissioned at 17, it's said that he fought at Tangier, although some people question that. That's in North Africa. He served under the great French General Turenne, learning from the best. He returned to England with a reputation for calm bravery and competence. He became a court favourite and married a lady called Sarah Jennings. That was to be important later in his career. He entered Parliament, became Colonel of the King's Own Dragoons, but then inevitably politics intervened. During the Glorious Revolution, when William of Orange invaded England, Churchill initially stayed loyal to James II, but he did then switch sides. In his defence, James was a Catholic, an absolutist, and was alarming large numbers of Protestants. Churchill backed William of Orange, and under William his rise was rapid. Lieutenant General, Earl of Marlborough, trusted commander. And then at the Battle of Walcourt, he personally charged with the household cavalry at the decisive moment. His commander praised him not just for bravery, but for discipline and command. Because it's true, he wasn't just brave. He showed potential. He could run an army in a time where not many people could. Then came 1701, the War of Spanish Succession. Spain's childless king died. Francis, candidate to take over the Spanish throne, threatened to then dominate Europe. So Britain joined a grand alliance to stop it. When William of Orange, William III, died in 1702, everything aligned. New queen, new war, new commander. Queen Anne, as she now became, appointed Marlborough Captain General of the Army and Master General of the Ordnance. For once, the man commanding the army also controlled the machinery that equipped it. This mattered because the army he inherited was a bit of a mess. Tiny, underpaid, demoralised. After the last peace, Parliament had slashed it to just 7,000 men. Thousands of ex-soldiers drifted into crime. Highway robbery became a post-war career path. Marlborough's first priority wasn't glory, it was money. He insisted that his ally, Sidney Godolphin, controlled the treasury. Therefore, because of that, pay arrived on time, desertions fell, discipline improved. Amazing what happens when wages actually turn up and soldiers get paid, isn't it? From there, the reformers gathered pace. Marlborough obsessed over details. Shoes mattered, bread mattered, blankets mattered. Because if a man can't march, he can't fight. In 1704, when Vienna was threatened, Marlborough did something extraordinary. He marched across Europe, over 250 miles, across hostile territory. His force growing from around 20,000 men at the beginning to close to 80,000 by the time he was ready to do battle. He paid for supplies instead of looting. He organised commissaries in advance. Men arrived, pitched tents, boiled kettles and slept. Which sounds obvious, but in 1704 that was revolutionary. He even arranged replacement shoes en route and floating hospitals ahead of the army along the river. This wasn't glamour, this was administrative genius. The campaign ended at Blenheim, a crushing victory for the Allies. France lost its aura of invincibility, and Europe finally noticed those red-coated soldiers. Marlborough followed this with feats of logistics that impressed even his enemies, dragging siege trains to Lille, inspecting equipment personally, ending corrupt supply contracts. He fought battles with subtlety. At Ramillies, he fixed the enemy, shifted forces unseen, and then shattered them. At Oudenarde, he repeated the trick. Even at Malplaquet, bloody and costly, he proved the army could stand toe-to-toe with Europe's best. In 1711, he pierced the supposedly impregnable Ne Plus Ultra lines. 40 miles in 18 hours, no casualties, through an incredible French defensive network. The enemy never saw it coming. Tactically, at the same time, the army evolved too. Cavalry brought back elan again, using their swords, not just their pistols. Infantry mastered platoon fire that saw a wall of musket balls meet the enemy advance. Flintlocks replaced older weapons. Socket bayonets ended the pike forever. Disciplined volleys at close range. Hold fire, stand firm, keep firing. Simple, demanding, deadly. And it's something we would see time after time throughout British history. So what do you guys reckon? Britain's best? I know we haven't done a full comparison video here with Wellington, but if you're interested, let me know in the comments. Maybe that's something we can look into. I'm also happy to take a deeper dive into some of the battles if this video does well and if you're interested. Marlborough didn't reinvent the British Army. He repaired it, he polished it. He proved what it could be. And when the war ended, politics undid much of his work. He was dismissed. Some say he was corrupt. The army was cut again. Morale collapsed, but the lesson remained. When Britain wanted to, it could field a professional, disciplined, lethal army. Not because it loved soldiers, because it didn't. It never quite trusted them. Suspicion almost forced that efficiency within the ranks, and out of that tension emerged the redcoat. When he's paid, fed, drilled, he's deadly. Marlborough showed the way. The next great test would come soon enough, and the War of Austrian Succession will be discussed in a video I'm currently working on now, so subscribe for that, because we'll also be looking at the last English king to lead his troops in battle. Also, I'm going to put my sources for this video in the description to check that out. Consider joining my Patreon page, patreon.com/redcoathistory, if you want early access to videos and lots of other freebies. And now watch the video that's on screen. I think you're going to like it.